Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the September 25th Finance and Audit Committee meeting. I'd like to first recognize we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Clerk today will be Ms. Karen Robertson. We also have Councillors Manley, and we had Councillor Armstrong a second ago attending electronically, unless she's slipped away. Good thing I'm not. There we are. Good morning. Today's Finance and Audit Committee meeting will be held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question on a matter that was considered by the committee today, please sign up on the sheet located on the table next to the double doors on my left. Please note that Council Procedure Bylaw has been updated, so questions will only be taken on staff reports or other business items. Before we start the meeting, I would like to take a few moments to remind those who are attending in person about the rules of decorum for all council and committee meetings. A meeting of council and a committee is intended to be a place where democracy can freely take place. In a respectful and safe manner, the council chambers is a workplace, and there are considerations council and staff must make to ensure that a safe work environment exists in accordance with WorkSafe BC regulations. To support this, disrespectful conduct will not be tolerated, so we ask that there be no cheering, jeering, or other outbursts from the gallery at any time. This will ensure that anyone speaking, whether it be a delegation, member of council, or staff, is not interrupted and can make their point freely without distraction or fear of ridicule. In instances where a speaker is being inappropriate or has exceeded their time limit, their microphone will be cut off. If there are outbursts by any person in the gallery, they will be asked to stop, and if they do not comply, they may be asked to leave as permitted under Section 133 of the Community Charter. If necessary, council may call a recess in order to reset the environment of the council chambers. It is our belief that if everyone is respectful of these basic considerations, this meeting and future meetings will be more effective in furthering the business of the City of Nanaimo. The first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. We have none this morning, Ms. Robertson. Motion for adoption of the agenda, moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favour? Any opposed? None. Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated, moved Councillor Eastmere, seconded Councillor Hemmons. All those in favour? Opposed? None. Motion is carried. We have no presentations, but we do have a delegation this morning, and that's Peter Sinclair of the Loaves and Fishes Food Bank, Loaves and Fishes new warehouse distribution centre update, and request to waive building permit fees.
Your Worship, I'm going to recuse myself. I'm on the board.
Very good. We'll give Councillor Hemmons a moment to absent herself. And welcome to Mr. Sinclair.
Well, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to come and speak before you.
And you'll have 5 minutes, as you know.
5 minutes. You cut.
Not your first time, I know. I haven't even started the clock yet, so you're safe.
Not my first rodeo. I'm here first to say thank you. I am also here to provide you with an update, and I am here to also make a request of you as council. But first, the thank you. The City of Nanaimo has been an amazing partner of Loaves and Fishes Food Bank. This extends back many years, but I'm going to mark 3 particular points. One was back in 2012 when you provided funding for our first 5-ton truck to begin food recovery. That program enabled us to access an abundance of food. And so a picture you're seeing here is the sort of abundance that we are able to access. This picture here, or these pictures here, were taken in our current warehouse, which the City of Nanaimo provided funding for in 2017 to help purchase. So we are thankful for that. But it is not just the current facilities that we have, it is the new facility that we are going to build. The City of Nanaimo has been an amazing partner providing the land to build a 24,000 square foot warehouse. So thank you for making that soon to be a reality. The growth has been phenomenal. You can see 2012, we accessed and distributed $1.3 million worth of food. Last year, it was $9 million. This year, we anticipate it being over $10 million worth of food. The new facility that we are planning to build is going to enable us to access even more food for our community. And so where are we at with this project? 2021, the City of Nanaimo purchased the land and leased it back to Loaves and Fishes with a 30-year lease so that we can begin designing and getting everything in place to build the warehouse. February 2023, the regional district provided over $272,000 to help with design and development costs. In March of 2023, the province of British Columbia provided $7 million. In May of 2023, a development permit was issued by the City of Nanaimo. In September of 2024, we are anticipating a building permit to be issued by the City of Nanaimo. We have contractors in place, ready to go. Construction will start immediately when we receive the building permit. To complete this project, it is going to take between $5.7 and $7.2 million to complete. $5.7 million gets us the shell and an operational warehouse, but missing many of the key things that we will require. These include a full-scale commercial kitchen, a generator backup, along with pallet racking. Those are things that we will forego if we just bring it to the $5.7 million. $7.2 million will enable us to have this warehouse fully complete and fully operational. So we have been engaging the federal government, and we have requested $7.2 million with them. We have retained a lobbyist, and we have been working directly with Sean Fraser, the Minister of Housing. We were anticipating a meeting directly with him when the Liberal caucus was meeting here in Nanaimo, but he had surgery and was not able to attend those meetings. We had requested a meeting with the Prime Minister. That was not possible because of his tight timeline. But fortunately, I coach at the Nanaimo Track and Field Club. Justin Trudeau made an appearance at the track club.
1 minute, I was going to say, and you ran the Prime Minister down. I'll give you a few seconds. Well done.
It was joked that I should race him in an 800 meter, and the winner would agree to cover the $7.2 million. I did take that opportunity to make our request directly to him, and I can tell you that he went from the initial, friendly, engaging politician, very positive, to when I made the request, he was fully engaged. We got direct contact with his Director of Operations, so I remain hopeful that they will fund that. If they don't, we have a mortgage for $5.7 million secured with Island Savings to ensure that we can begin getting this project going. If the federal government does not provide $7.2 million, we are asking the City of Nanaimo to waive or cover the building permit fee and waive or cover the service contribution agreement fee related to East Wellington Road. Now, I know the City of Nanaimo has done a lot for Loaves and Fishes, so this is an additional ask. Why? Because at the end of the 30-year lease, the City of Nanaimo is going to own this facility. It will also help us reduce the mortgage payments because a $5.7 million mortgage is going to have a significant monthly payment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sinclair. I don't know if council members have any questions for you. That's not a reflection on you. That's a reflection on the fact I think we're all very well aware of the amazing work that you've done in this, you and the whole team have done in this community over many years, and for which the community is grateful, although I couldn't say this without expressing the sadness that in 2024 you should have to be so successful in a modern, stable, liberal democracy. So, not seeing anyone. I can't see anyone on the screen. Thank you so much for the presentation this morning. Appreciate it. Sorry, it's not showing up. Councillor Eastmere? Go ahead. Mr. Sinclair, Councillor Eastmere.
My question is for staff. I'm just noting that none of us can probably even indicate that we'd like to
touch the mic because mine came on.
Okay. So my question is to staff. In order to potentially look at doing this ask, can we get a report back on the cost implications for the city to either cover or waive those costs? And do we have a sense of how much of the budget this amount would actually represent? Of the project budget?
Well, I can say certainly if council wishes, we're more than happy to bring back a report, and I think we could do that in pretty short order. I understand in terms of the actual building permit fees, we're looking at approximately 67,000.
Around 62,500 for the building permit fee. And then the works and services, the cost share agreement on East Wellington Road was in the order of 54,000, slightly more than that, but those are rough figures. So total around 116,000.
And your worship, I think this is why a report would be helpful, just to remind council not only of the land acquisition that the council's already made, but also other commitments we've already made on road, cost sharing of road frontage works and services. So we could bring that information back.
Thank you very much. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. A question also for staff. How long will it take to get a report back, given this is a substantial request for you for the workload, but given that they want to get the construction started immediately, that's why I'm concerned.
I believe, well, we could certainly commit to getting back to the next Finance and Audit Committee meeting, but that's a few weeks away. If it was more, if council was, if the committee was more interested in seeing something in the near future, we could bring it back directly to council if that was the preference.
Your Worship, if you want to, just given what we have on the agenda this morning, if you want to bring this back up under other business, or if you prefer, because I'd like to see this brought back sooner versus the next meeting.
I'm easy, and in light of the comments from council this morning, and I think the general view, do we even need a notice of motion, Mr. Lindsay, in the circumstances, Mr. Holm?
Your Worship, council
Ms.
can
Robertson.
make a motion without having to make a notice of motion. So if you want to make a motion to
So moved.
staff a report.
Yep.
For staff
Sorry,
report.
what's the motion?
So moved, a staff report, but to be brought back as soon as possible.
And seconded. Councillor Easterman, you want to say something?
Well, I think in the presentation, the ask is contingent on whether they receive federal funding, so that's important. And I guess the timeline is based on when they get an answer back from the federal government. And I think it doesn't sound like this will hold up the beginning of the building process when they get their permit. So I'm happy to get a staff report with more information.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Only to say that I'm assuming that they're expecting some feedback from the federal government very quickly, because to start construction in September, we have like 3 days left. I don't know if we can ask, I'm not sure if we can ask Mr. Sinclair when they expect to hear, or does staff know when we expect to hear from the federal government?
Mr. Sinclair, please.
So you're rightly identifying things don't move quickly with the federal government. Our intention is that when the building permit is issued, that we would pay that fee so that it is not caught up with, the systems at the city of Nanaimo. Our hope would be that we do get the funding from the federal government, and in the event that it doesn't come through and we are accessing the mortgage to complete it, then we would be seeking a refund from the city of Nanaimo. But it's our intention to keep this project moving. So you're not under the pressure of, oh, we're all ready to go, but council hasn't made a decision here. So our intention is to keep this moving and assume a refund would happen.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm in favor of this then. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Yeah, just a question to Mr. Sinclair. Thanks for all your work on this, and exciting that it's getting close to the build stage. My question is, is it helpful at all for the city to write a letter to any of these federal ministers being like, we're 100% support, this is how much money we put into it, and that, or is it at this point?
Yes, it is helpful. We actually had a campaign across Vancouver Island where we had, individual citizens, but also various cities submit those letters directly to Sean Fraser. There were literally hundreds of them. We didn't make that request of the city of Nanaimo, or press that request with the city of Nanaimo, because $1.4 million to help acquire the land was a significant, gesture that, yes, the city of Nanaimo is behind this. So We had letters, I believe, from Comox, we had them from Port McNeill, Port Hardy, Tassus, Sabalis. But, you know, if you would like to address a letter
Well,
to Sean Fraser, that would be.
Yeah, I assume in the letter you spoke to them, I mean, that's very clear, our contribution.
Yes,
to that information,
100%.
so May not add a whole bunch more, so.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's nothing further, we can get Councillor Hemmons back. Oh, sorry, vote yes. All those in favor? That's a foregone conclusion. Any opposed? None, thank you. If we can get Councillor Hemmons back. The next item are reports, term positions, sustainability section. Mr. Holm, you're going to introduce this? Please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship and committee. Just briefly, we're looking, we have a small but very talented and recently hardworking and doing great work, is recently recognized in some awards the city's received through UBCM. Sustainability section, leading projects on a number of important projects on the city's sustainability file. Again, small group, 2.5 in total, led by Ting Pan, manager of sustainability. What we're asking for here is reallocation of funds from a number of projects. 70,000 from the building retrofit roadmap project and 40,000 from the e-mobility strategy. So already budgeted money, but just reallocating. And then the new allocation of 35,000 from the Climate Action Reserve Fund, and that would be towards a temporary position to a one-year term to support the work that the sustainability section is doing. There's a number of significant projects that are challenging the capacity of the team, and this assistance would help us move positively in that direction. Happy to take questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Holm? Councillor Prino?
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you to Mr. Holmes. I'm just wondering, you said reallocate 70,000 from the 2024 budget for the building retrofit roadmap. What does that do to that particular fund by taking that money out?
I think Ms. Pan's going to come down and give us an answer.
Great, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Your Worship. So we currently have $90,000 allocated for that project. So we're still gonna have some left in the budget to cover any costs that we might anticipate for any task specifically requiring expert knowledge or proprietary tools. But the anticipation is that the project management will be done in-house.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions. Councillor Eastmere?
Thank you. So this is expected as a temporary full-time position. What happens at the end of that contract? Like, do you anticipate that once we have the person in this role and we see like how valued it will be, there may be an ask to extend that position? I'm just wondering if, like, how temporary is it?
So Your Worship, that's a great question. I think it's going to be an ongoing conversation with the director and with the organization and with finance as to, we'll have to assess the capacity need and the projects and what is the best mechanism to support city's priority actions.
Councillor Gisselbrock?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, just want to say I'm glad to see this request. I know that the sustainability section has been doing a ridiculous amount of work and producing a lot, and imagine the workload. So good to see that they're bringing some more bodies into the mix, and we'll take it from there at the end of the year. Thank you.
Councillor Hemmons is moving the recommended motion. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Eastmere, discussion on this? All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much. Appreciate the attendance this morning. The next is the Van Corallen Military Museum Operating Model Alignment. Mr. Harding, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Your Worship. Morning, Council. This report, and I'll turn it over quickly to Ms. Osborne, but it's a follow-up of a presentation made to Council by the Military Museum back in April. And so coming back to you with some options for potential operating options or ideas. Mr. Bird, Mr. McFadden are also in the audience to answer any questions you may have. I would say two things that aren't in the report, that the group's actually been with us since 2010. So they've been with us for 14 years. And in that time, it's just an amazing group to work with. They've been paying us rent, and as far as I can tell, I've confirmed it with them, they've never asked us for a grant or any other operating assistance in those 14 years. So I'll turn over to Ms. Osborne. There she is.
Ms. Osborne, good morning. I notice it's Breen Mercer in the report now. Is that to save me from embarrassing myself because I've known you so long that I might get the name wrong? Just teasing. Ms. Osborne, please.
Good morning, Your Worship and Committee. As Mr. Harding expressed, the purpose of this report is to recommend that the Van Corallen Military Museum operating be aligned with those of our city co-managed cultural facilities. Mr. McFadden and Mr. Bird, the President and Vice President of the Van Corallen Military Museum, who are here today, front row, provided an update in April on the operations. During their presentation, they expressed concern with their aging board and their ability to manage the museum under the current operating model. The Van Corallen Military Museum lease actually expired in December 31st of 2022, and since then we've been extending annually as we work towards defining a new model. City staff and the general manager of the Nanaimo Museum, Sophia Mahar, and the president and vice president of the Van Corallen Military Museum have been working together to determine the best way forward under the current staffing resources and the funding circumstances. You have before you a report that outlines the recommended steps to be taken to implement a new operating model aligned with the city co-management cultural facilities, as well as the financial considerations. The recommendation before you is that the Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council approve realigning the Van Corallen Military Museum operating model by ending the requirement to pay annual rent for 100 Cameron Road beginning in 2025, directing staff to assist the Van Corallen Military Museum Board of Directors with establishing a general manager position, and directing staff to begin working to establish a co-management agreement with the Van Corallen Military Museum. Adrian Mercer-Breen and myself are here to answer any further questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eastmere? No? Any questions? Councillor Thorpe?
There's no questions, I'll move the recommendation.
Seconded Councillor Perino.
I will speak.
Please.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yes, I'm really pleased to see this come forward because I think a couple of years ago I expressed a concern about how the city dealt with the military museum in terms of fairness or alignment with other facilities that we have in town, such as the art gallery, the museum, and the Port Theatre, and that's identified in the report. So this is bringing us into alignment, and I know as Councillor Perino and I sit on the tourism board that the military museum has been identified as a major tourist attraction to our downtown. So happy to see us give more support, and I think this is, as I said, bringing alignment, bringing fairness in how we treat this facility and ensure its long-term survival, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons and Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to support this. I will say it's tricky because the financials aren't in, and I wonder if those will be in by budget time.
Sorry. Yes, we will be able to provide those financials for you.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. Yeah, really happy to see this go forward. I think the comparison between the museum and the art gallery and other agreements that we have such as this, this just brings the museum into that and provides that structure. I want to thank Sophia Marr for helping. It sounds like she was a really big help in this, and that's great. So yeah, happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship, and also happy to support. Just to say thank you so much to the gentlemen that are here and all of the volunteers at the military, on the military board. It's important that we remember this history always. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, there's nothing like politicians wishing to gild the lily, and I'm one. I remember well meeting with Mr. Brothers my first term as MLA way back when, and I want to pay tribute to him and to the many others who have followed and worked with him throughout years. It gives this city a unique window into the military history of this country, and anyone who chooses or takes the time to come and visit, it provides a tremendous attraction for tourists, something again that is quite unique, and I'm very well aware of the incredible number of hours of work that are given by a fairly small group of very dedicated people. So on behalf of the community, just thank you so very much for all that you have done and continue to do. I'm not seeing any other speakers. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is the allocation of remainder of funds from 2024 Community Watershed Restoration Grant.
Thank you, Worship. We had I wouldn't consider it late, but we had some remaining funds in this grant. We had started to work with, introducing with the Barsby School. They were indicating if there's any funding available to do some of the work that they would like to do. And we did recognize that there were some funds left in this grant, and recommending that it's a good project, we're recommending that we proceed with this organization and the remainder of the grants for 2024.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eastmere?
I would like to move the recommendation, and I just think it's really amazing to see that the students are interested in stewarding this.
And we have a seconder with Councillor Perino. Thank you.
Thank you. Took that for granted. Because when you see the youth stepping up to want to do this kind of work, I think it's really exciting. So thanks for bringing this forward.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is Culture and Event Grants, Processes, Review, and Recommendations. Mr. Harding again, please.
Your Worship, I'll turn this over quickly to Ms. Brett. This, though, is coming back from a GPC that we had with Council about 3 years ago. And it's taken us a while to get some of this some of the work, but these are some of the recommendations that Council asked us to look at, particularly looking at the grant, how we're doing with our operating grants, cultural operating grants, and our cultural projects. And as you notice, one of the changes we're proposing hasn't really been looked at since 2014. So I'll turn over to Ms. Brett.
Ms. Sine, good morning.
Is that on? Oh, it is. Good morning. It was a red light, so I wasn't sure. So with this presentation, I'm hoping to contextualize some of this information for you.
Stop. Sorry, just
yes.
for 1 second. Try it again.
My microphone?
Yeah, the reason is it wasn't showing up on my screen as being on. So.
Oh, odd.
All right. Thank you. Please.
No problem at all. So to contextualize some of the information on our Culture and Events Grant Program Review. So with that said, this is just a bit of an idea of what I'm going to run through here. I promise it will be quite concise, but I'll give you a summary of the grants, go through a little bit of that background, as well as the changes we've completed in addition to what's ongoing, the methods we used as part of this process review, the conclusions we came to, and what the implications and impact of that is, and then finally the key recommendations, and of course time for questions. So as you'd all be familiar with, we have 3 grant streams through Culture and Events, and that is the Operating, the Project, and the Downtown Event Revitalization Fund. And this particular report is focused on the Operating and the Project grants. Now, the Operating grant is for organizational costs for arts, culture, and heritage organizations making significant contributions in Nanaimo. And there is a 1-year and a 3-year stream. That budget is currently sitting just a little over $322,000. And then we have the project grant stream, and that is for cultural organizations to program, to fund different projects in town, which again are making significant contributions to the city. Now our funding request total for those 3 streams was just under $824,000 in 2024. And that left us with a shortfall, so the difference between our asks versus what was available, of just over $207,000. Now, as a little bit of context, the last funding increase was allocated in 2014, and that is when the operating grant funding was increased from $2.30 to $3 per capita over a period of 3 years. And then in that same year, the project grant funding was increased by 10% annually for 5 years, from 2015 to 2019. So the operating grant funding hasn't increased since 2017, aside from changes with population. And then the project grant hasn't increased since 2019. So the process of this program review coming to you today actually began in 2014. That's when the last comprehensive review of cultural funding occurred. And in 2020, it was when the Governance and Priorities Committee directed Council to endorse a review of the 3 grant streams. And that review began in earnest in 2023 and then continued into this year of 2024, where staff did a thorough review of the culture grants and extended that somewhat to include the PRC, Parks, Rec and Culture grants as a whole. So this is what we were focusing on for issues, and this was pulled directly from the report from 2020 and what staff had said they would come back with recommendations on. And this included the following issues: equity, accessibility and diversity, appropriate levels of funding, online systems for applications, eligibility and reporting requirements such as assessment criteria and budget requirements, allocations involving peer assessment, and of course identifying and reducing barriers. Now, the value of this review is really that we were looking to bring this into closer alignment with the city plan. So looking to achieve better clarity of transparency, accountability, effectiveness of the programs, and really to communicate the value of these programs and their impact in the city. What we've completed so far is a standardization of program templates, formalization of processes such as our appeals process, reports process, incomplete applications, and so on. We improved our interdepartmental communication and consistency among grants, so from understanding what grants are being allocated by different departments to the language that is being used and having some consistency there, as well as expectations. Dialogue with our community partners has been completed. And of course, we've provided an online submission option for all grants, though we are still accepting paper copies of grants with accessibility issues in mind. Ongoing, we have continued research into online grant platforms. We're looking to establish a marketing and communication strategy for PRC grants, so specifically speaking to what grants are available, but also better communicating the impact of this funding throughout the city. Transitioning grant assessment processes to reflect feedback gathered from that peer-to-peer evaluation, and then again, applying those standardized templates more broadly to all PRC grants. So there are about 2 umbrellas for the methods we used in collecting this information, and one was looking at other BC municipalities, specifically looking at municipalities that we felt were equivalent in population or perhaps had equivalent grant programs. And we did a comparative analysis of funding allocation. Of course, we also looked at the collection of information on funding models and processes. And then again, as I mentioned, we had that dialogue with community partners. So we sought feedback. We did distribute a survey to previously funded organizations as well as currently funded, and really evaluated those challenges and barriers. The conclusions we came to in that is when it came to the BC municipalities, we do have comparatively inadequate funding. We also noted a trend to peer-to-peer assessment models. As far as the community partners' feedback went, they did report inadequate, the majority reported inadequate funding. They were, however, satisfied with the process and staff support. I didn't want to just tell you these things, though. I did want to show you. So I have some examples for you that I can explain here, and this is other BC municipalities. Looking at the city of Vancouver, of course, it doesn't make sense just to look at what their budget is, because we're dealing with a different budget there and different population. But what is interesting to note is that they received a 2.04% increase in cultural grant budget in 2024, and they're meeting 87% of their funding requests. So compare that to us, our average with operating in project, we're meeting about 65% or lower in funding requests. The city of New Westminster, which has a slightly lower population than us, offers $400,000 more in available grants. City of Surrey actually meets 100% of their cultural funding requests through their grant program. When you look at the Capital Regional District and you break it down as though it had the same population as Nanaimo, they're still providing 35% more in available funding through their operating and project grants. And then finally, City of Kelowna receives 3.9% annual increase in their grants budget. And these are some quotes from our community partners. These are taken directly from surveys. I haven't said who's being quoted because we did offer the option of them submitting this feedback anonymously, so they would do so honestly. So one quote says, operating funding is not yet adequate, although our organization is very grateful to receive it. Another says a higher level of funding would ease things and be appreciated. Another says funding for operation has seen a dramatic cut and doesn't meet the needs of the association anymore. Another, the funding was vital to our organization, but given the significant downturn in audiences post-COVID, none of our funding partners are meeting current needs. The funding requests were less than our programs need to operate, so the board has been considering reducing programming. And finally, it was not adequate, but it did help us cover costs, better than a smack in the belly with a wet fish. Now, one thing I did want to touch upon, though I'm sure many of you will already be familiar with some of these statistics, is just the impact and importance of arts and culture and why these programs are so essential. 96% of Canadians view arts, culture, and heritage organizations as essential spaces. Arts and culture are vital to Nanaimo's identity, quality of life, economic prosperity, social cohesion, and sustainability. And one of the things we were doing in this process was really bringing it back to the city plan and looking at how these programs are recognized as a significant contributor to quality of life. A couple of interesting stats is that these are from 2026. BC is actually the national leader in creating new cultural sector jobs, leading by 26% over the national average. And BC's cultural economy totaled $8.6 billion in 2023. And of course, we know the cultural sector attracts talent across industries and contributes to some of the fastest growing parts of the economy. A couple more interesting stats include that 1 in every 5 Canadian artists resides in BC. With just about 155,000 cultural workers in BC, we have the highest proportion of cultural workers in Canada. And there were just about 116,000 cultural jobs in BC, and this is in 2021, so you can imagine it's increased. And in the chart there, you see where culture is highlighted and just how significant they are when it comes to a contributor for employment. So we know that the cultural sector is critical to economic prosperity. Research on arts and culture's economic impact in Canada and BC revealed that the cultural economic production outperforms many other industries. And it's actually since 2017 that the BC government has made significant investments in the cultural sector, and that's why we're seeing BC as the national leader in creating cultural sector jobs. So the stat you're seeing there is showing the cultural economy as being $7.9 billion, and that's from 2019. So in just 2 years, it had increased to $8.6 billion. And finally, again, I want to say when we came to these key recommendations, we were connecting back to the city plan and how we can recognize arts and culture as being vital to Nanaimo's identity. These recommendations bring culture grant funding into closer alignment with municipal standards and provides arts and culture organizations with funding that better supports organizational goals. So the recommendation we're making today is that Council add a decision point for consideration to the 2025 budget deliberations for a 10% annual increase for 5 years. So that would be 2025 to 2029 in project grant funding, and a 25-cent per capita annual increase for 3 years, so 2025 to 2027 in operating grant funding. So I won't talk any longer, and I will open it up to any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Eastmere, then Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. First off, I think this is a great report, and I really appreciate the work that our culture team is doing. I think I've seen you out doing a lot, and it is making a difference in the community, and we have like an amazing community for arts and culture and music, and I'm really glad to see us kind of digging in and seeing how we can support it better. I was wondering, with the overview of our grants and processes, did you look at identifying any anything that we're like currently funding or programs we're currently doing that might be better transitioned to spend the money on these kinds of grants and programs instead? Like, is there anything we're doing that we're going to shift to do it differently, noting that we...
You mean outside of the grant program? Sorry, through your worship, Councillor Eastmere. There was some shifting among our grants in terms of where organizations were applying. For example, we saw a great deal of organizations moving from project grants to the Downtown Event Revitalization Fund. One, because there's a huge revitalization of the downtown core, but also because they realized how little was available in the project grant fund. We do info sessions as well. We're doing, I think, 3 this week alone on our grants process. They are mandatory for anybody applying to our grants to come to. And in that process, I do actually review things like other funding streams available beyond our own scope, because that's a huge, very confusing field for a lot of these groups. So we do support them in that process as well. We occasionally also will support with letters of support, which we have done when it comes to grants through Canadian Heritage or BC Arts Council, to better support those groups too in accessing other funding. As for other ways the city may be contributing to these organizations and their ability to present these events, I think that's probably going to be an ongoing conversation, especially when it comes to what the priorities are, the IAPs, and what we really want to focus on, because I think there will need to be some directed focus with limited funds available.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think maybe one thing I'd like to ask about is the temporary public art program, and maybe how much funding goes into that per year. And I think it's been fun, and it is nice to see things freshened up, but maybe we have a conversation about transitioning that into creating more sustainable long-term pieces, recognizing the budget for that doesn't give artists actually really that much to work with in the end, and we might be able to use some of that funding towards some of these asks.
Through your worship, it can definitely be conversations. I think, to answer your question, the temporary public art program comparatively is a very small budget compared to other municipalities. We have 2 artists that are selected per year. Their artist fee is $7,500, and each of them have up to $5,000 on fabrication fees. How that program continues to be administered could shift depending on priorities and what we'd like to really highlight in what we're doing with the public art program. I'd say the huge benefit in what we're doing in that not being a permanent art program is allowing so many different artists to access an opportunity to be involved in public art and to showcase their art, and also to have changing art. So it allows a lot more opportunity for the public to be engaged in those programs too. But yeah, I think there's absolutely more conversations to have in the future about the future of those programs.
Thanks so much for your work on this.
Councillor Hemmons and Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. Great report. My question is related to the comparatively inadequate funding. If we support option 1 and it gets funded through budget 2026, does that bring us up to comparatively in the same range as other municipalities? And when does that happen? Is it at the end of 5 years of investment or midway?
Through your worship, great question, because that was a big factor in what we were presenting as those recommendations, because ideally I'd like to see us as being able to match funding requests between 75 to 80%. So that is maybe still slightly below what is the average that you see in different municipalities, but at the same time we were looking at what has been a successful increase in the past, looking to emulate what was done in the past in terms of that increase and what would be possible. So in terms of what brings us up to kind of measure up, it would be at the end of those 3 years and 5 years. But with that said, that's also looking at current needs. And of course, we're seeing annual increases in needs, so it is a little hard to know. The asks increase annually, and it is a great thing. It's a reflection of how vibrant and alive the cultural community is, but it does make it a little hard to know what that landscape might be like and what the financial needs might be like in 5 years. Our hope, though, and our projection is that our key recommendations as they are presented would bring us into alignment with other municipalities.
Thank you. Follow up if I may? Just to confirm that it's the percentage that we are able to fund is not our only criteria for determining our comparability with other municipalities. Is that accurate? Because we could just have a lot more applications. We're actually looking at per capita spending.
Absolutely. There were three, I'd say, main points that, sorry, through your worship, I keep forgetting to say that, that decided how I presented those key recommendations. One was looking at the past increase that was successful, looking to emulate that and what felt feasible. And the other was, of course, looking at the municipalities and looking to look at an average and align with that funding. But then the third point was looking at what asks are coming to us annually, looking at the percentage increase annually, and then I was also going back through the grant reports, which are submitted annually to us at the end of funding, to look at some of that feedback, what programs organizations had to cut back on, what were successful, what were able to be fully funded, and how that impacted the organizational's goals. So yes, it was multifaceted how we came to those recommendations.
Thank you.
Councillor Perino and then Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Your Worship. And a question through you. Thank you for the report. It was excellent, very thorough. Under the provisional financial plan proposed, so the proposed increases, and these are obviously funded through property taxation. I'm not sure how to ask this. Given assessments going down, maybe for Ms. Fuller, with assessments possibly going down, that means more of a tax increase. If our population continues to rise, as we expect it will, it should mean a bit of a reduction. Is that correct? Well, I'm not, you know what, I'm not even, I guess what I'm wondering is, you know, this is going to be added to our property taxation. Is it less on us if we have a population increasing as we expect it to?
Through the chair to Councillor Perino. So when we calculate your property tax increase, we always have that line of property tax base increase due to growth. So usually for provisional and draft budget, we estimate the 1.2 million, and that is factored into your property tax increase. So more that our property tax base grows, so new builds, new people moving here, that does increase our tax base,
yes,
gives us more money to work with, which does impact how much the property tax increase is for the year.
Okay, so these numbers, though, are stable, right? They won't change? The numbers that we're seeing there under the proposed increase, is that correct?
So the numbers you're seeing under the proposed increase are based on our estimated, so the one grant funding stream is based on capita.
Yes.
So we do a projection of what, based on historical, we look at
Yes.
the 3 and 5 year average. So if the population grows greater than that, then the increase will be more than that. If the population grows less than we're anticipating, then the increase would be less than that, because the one funding is per capita.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Manley?
Thank you. Actually, I was doing some math here while I was sort of answered my own question before I needed to ask it. I'm just curious about the 25 cents per capita increase for 3 years. That's going to bring us into alignment with the operating grants, or you're saying it's going to bring us to about 80% of what the asks would be? Is that correct?
Through your worship, that is the hope, yes, that projection will bring us, I'm thinking it'll probably be closer to 75%. It is a little hard to know because organizations have been reporting rising operational costs, so their budgets are obviously fluctuating and changing. But yes, our hope is that the increase by the end of those 3 years will be in closer alignment and ideally meeting 75 to 80% of the funding asks.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious about whether we'll, in another few years, be looking at a request for another increase. Thank you for the report. I'm very supportive of this and very supportive of the arts. I think our arts community does amazing work with small budgets, and they provide a lot of value to the community and to our tourism sector. So thank you for the report.
Moved by Councillor Hemmons, the recommended motion, seconded. Councillor Perino. Councillor Thorpe, please.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Just a couple of comments, if I may. So my understanding of this motion, which I will support, is that we're simply agreeing to add this as a talking point for our budget deliberations. Ms. Fulla is nodding vigorously and recognizing that those budget discussions are always difficult. We know that they're always going to be difficult. So I certainly support the value of culture and event grants and appreciate the work of our staff at administering them. And I think we need to acknowledge off the top that we are never going to meet all of the requests for grants. And the more money we have available, the more money people will ask for. And some people are always going to have to be turned aside. But I think we can and should do better than roughly 60%. So I look forward to that discussion. A couple of requests, unofficial requests. When we have that discussion, I would be interested in more comparisons with other municipalities similar to Nanaimo, rather than looking at Vancouver. Similar populations, similar budgets. What are those communities doing, if that's possible to find out? And secondly, options regarding financial and taxation impact. The chart you provided forecasts the 10%. Could we have an option of 5% just to see what that impact would be on taxes, just to give us an option? Those are just my thoughts, but I don't know if that information could be provided when we have that future discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I've often said, I've read a lot of history for pleasure, and I've never read of any civilization that collapsed because it had too much arts and culture. Not seeing any further speakers. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation this morning. The next is the quarterly purchasing report, single and sole source purchases in excess of $250,000 and instances of exceptions to trade agreements. Ms. Fulla, good morning.
Good morning. So for Council's information, we've provided the quarterly purchasing report, so it covers April 1st to June 30th. And as you mentioned, it covers sole source and single source purchases between $25,000 and $250,000, purchases in excess of $250,000, and instances of exceptions to trade agreements. And staff is here if you have any questions on the report.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any questions. I want to recognize Ms. Rushton's presence. Thank you for coming this morning. Councillor Perino is going to ask a question. Well, no. Oh, sorry. No, it's just, no. Thank you. You're off the hook, Ms. Rushton. Stay dry. The next is Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant 2024 intake. Ms. Fulla, please, and Mr. Sims.
Good morning, Council. The Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant 2024 intake has opened. Each year we always apply several projects to this program and have been quite successful in the past. Staff had a cross-departmental meeting and reviewed our project plan to see which projects we had that might fit the criteria of the program that we could apply for. And before you is staff's recommendation on 2 projects. One project, we have bundled a number of different upgrades together. This way we could maximize our grant request. And then the other project deals with the 3rd Street project that we'll be undertaking. And staff is here to answer any questions on the particular projects that we're proposing submitting an application for.
I'm not see.
I'll make recommended motion.
Councillor Hemmons making the recommended motion, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? And any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We have no other business. Nothing in question period.
Move to adjourn.
Councillor Hemmons moves to adjourn, seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone.